This is the combined Buildings and Grounds and Finance Committee meeting, November 18th, 2020, 7 p.m. This meeting will please come to order. Everybody okay here? All right. Since we often have to work in concert with finance, it's best to do this together. So I would like first to introduce two representatives from ICS, Mr. Phil Solomon and Tim Geiger. Hello there. Who have joined us this evening along with the District Facilities Administrator, Mike Shelgren, and Assistant Facilities Administrator, Mr. Aaron Rothrock. All have been deeply involved in this project and are extremely knowledgeable in the domain. Following ICS's presentation, I will ask B&G members for follow-up questions, followed by Finance Committee follow-up questions to be directed to either ICS or administrative personnel. And if time permits, then the public will be admitted for questioning. We are on the District Core Energy Savings Project. Mrs. Crumrine and Mr. Shelgren, would you please proceed?
Absolutely. Just to give everybody a little bit of background, we started this going down this road prior to COVID. And we had ICS highly involved in the feasibility study, and then they did an initial assessment and then a deeper dive. The initial assessment was just to determine whether it made sense for us to move forward. So I think without further ado, we can let Phil Solomon take over and update everybody where we are and what our next steps are.
Well, great, thank you. Well, thanks for inviting us here tonight to share our findings. Paul, if you could bring up the presentation and I'll get started. You know, again, I'm Phil Solomon from ICS. As was introduced, I have Tim Geiger with me. We have about 15 minutes of material. Intent is really to discuss what we found infrastructure-wise, talk a little bit about what's called the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act. If I use any acronyms, please throw something at me or tell me. Engineering is acronym heavy, similar to education. So just stop me if I say something that is not understood. If you could go to the next slide. Just quick overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about the team's background, the history here at O&J Roberts, give you kind of a short, brief primer on the PA Guaranteed Energy Savings Act. That's the procurement act we're talking about, the overall process, what we found, a financial snapshot of a potential project, and then next steps. So with that, let me go to the next slide, just talk a little bit about the team. You know, our team is comprised of engineers, construction managers, facility assessment experts, commodity experts. So we have a really strong focus around energy. Our firm, ICS, we're licensed mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers and construction managers, and we do work in both the traditional design bid build space, as you use to build buildings, as well as this energy space. We are partnered with Provident Energy, who is a commodity consultant, and they have been helping you buy commodities for about 10 years or so. Together, we represent about 200 clients. Almost all of them are school districts in Pennsylvania. And we really have kind of two objectives. So, use the energy more effectively. That's your energy efficiency component. And then pay less for the energy being used. So we're kind of on the supply and demand side. Together, we've managed about $250 million worth of projects like yours here in Pennsylvania. So let me talk a little bit, next slide, sorry. Talk a little bit about the history here. As Mrs. Crumride said, we've been working on this for about a year. Timing couldn't be perfect because in that year there was COVID, and that obviously took precedence, but started with the high level benchmark in February of 2020, February of this year. Like I said, paused and finally completed our preliminary analysis in October of this year. Going back in history, Provident has been doing energy purchasing for the district for about 10 years. They've done very well, reducing that overall commodity piece by about 300,000. And then also going back in history, that the district had done a guaranteed energy savings project in about 2011. And I know many of you maybe weren't here at the time, but I actually was part of that project way back then, different firm. But that was the project used to put solar on the middle school, high school. Also had some very good results to it. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So just a little bit about the Guaranteed Energy Savings Act. It's really a procurement process used for energy-related infrastructure needs by municipal entities. That's schools and counties, etc. The tenets of this are that the guaranteed energy and operational savings will offset the cost of the project. So you're looking at kind of budget neutral projects or budget positive projects. And really, when you look at this, it's kind of a design build process versus the traditional design bid build. And what that means primarily is one entity is responsible for all the scope. In the design bid build process, you have multiple prime contractors that are working together to do scope. So, it's a little more fragmented in that traditional process. The other key thing is in the traditional design bid build process, you have a designer, they come up with plans and specs, then you put that out to bid, then you have contractors who try to get low on that project, and then you have installation. Well, that's a fragmented process. And what tends to happen is a lot of change orders, finger pointing, etc. The GISA process is a little different because the constructor of the project works together with the designer of the project to finalize scope. And one of the benefits of that is that there's no change orders. You know how the project's going to get installed up front, so there's no surprises. Now, this is done a little different than your traditional bid process. It's a request for proposal process. And in that process, you're evaluating all kinds of different things, first cost, but also energy savings, quality, installation experience, plan. There's a lot of factors, and sometimes that makes public entities a little uncomfortable because they have to negotiate all those things. But that's where our team comes in. We help you really look at all those things, optimize them all for the district, get the best package from the ESCO, and then select the right partner. We do a lot of work in both of these. And for energy projects that we're talking about, the GISA process is really a hands down winner. So let's go to the next step. So this is, I know it seems like a lot of steps here, but the boxes in green the district has done so far. And I just want to step you through each kind of box and just kind of tell you how it works and give you an overview of the GISA process. So, obviously we introduced the concept. That was just what we were talking about a second ago. That high level benchmark, that's a go, no go kind of analysis. It tells you at a 30,000 foot level, is there a project? Then if there is, like for your district, we move to the preliminary analysis. And that's where we dig into this and say, okay, what is that project comprised of? Is it just lighting? Is it controls? Is it roofing and windows? Come up with what are the actual scope items that are going to be in a project. And to do that, you work collaboratively with the staff. So we work quite a bit with, the facilities department and business department and all these different people who had input. So now you're kind of at this decision step. So the next step would be this box, and I'm sorry, I just pointed my screen like you can see that, but it's directed RFP. So you can kind of see how it goes around. So, that's kind of where you are now. What we would do next is we take all the information we've gathered and developed and understood, put that into a request for proposal. That goes out, advertised, and then you'll have what's called ESCOs, energy service companies, that will respond to that. And they give you these giant binders that are 3 inches thick with all the technical and financial components of how they could do this project. So our team goes in and we help break all that down, normalize scopes, kind of negotiate what's the best package for the district and help the district select the best ESCO. At that point, you would move to the investment grade audit box. Sorry, I just used my mouse. That doesn't work again. Yes, thank you. So at that point, that's when the constructor, the ESCO, and the designer, us, work together to finalize everything for that contract. Now, at that point, everything's known. And that's really where the district is saying, okay, yes, we want to move forward with this project. Up to there, you haven't really invested a lot at that point. At that point, then it goes into installation, and our team oversees that. So we're an owner rep for the school district as well, just making sure things go smoothly and things get installed the way that we intended as the engineer of record. Then finalizing that, we help the district with measurement and verification. So remember, these projects have guaranteed savings. So the ESCO will produce reports. Here's how much we thought we saved you, et cetera. Well, we're going to review all that, make sure that it's accurate. You're getting what you paid for. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I know it's a lot of steps, but could certainly answer any questions about that. Tim is going to talk specifically about what we found here.
Oh, great. Thanks, Phil. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so just a brief history of some of those steps that Phil kind of mentioned. The first step really is the benchmarking analysis, which is really a high level overview of your energy spend on the electricity side, natural gas, propane, fuel oil, and basically collecting all that information per building and normalizing that on a per square foot basis, and then really comparing that to similar school districts in southeastern Pennsylvania. And like Phil said, we have 200 plus clients that we work with, so we have a really strong database of schools to compare against. So really, you start by looking at that and comparing them to others, and kind of what are the top 25th percentile and bottom 25th and median, and then you come up with a target, an energy target for the district. So highlights from that: basically your baseline energy spend is just over $1 million a year. Potential savings just north of $250,000 a year in energy, and that would generate about $5 million over 20 years, which is the term that a Giza project could go over. And there's additional maintenance and operational savings that can be found in a project. The best example is really LED lighting. It lasts a lot longer than fluorescent lights. So, because it's got longer life, you're not going to have to replace the material as often, and thereby get operational savings from that. So we kind of came back and presented that to the district, Aaron and Mike and Jackie, and then we moved on to the preliminary analysis, really to kind of uncover the specific ECMs in the buildings. So next slide.
ECM is an energy conservation measure.
Yeah.
I was just going to interject that question. Thank you.
Or
see, there's those acronyms.
So really, this is where we dug a little bit deeper. We collected a lot of information, again, working with your administration and Aaron and Mike from facilities, available drawings that you have, previous reports that were done over the years, looking at the building automation systems that you have. We kind of sat down and interviewed some of your staff members, and then we went out and did site visits to really evaluate the different mechanical and electrical, building systems inside your buildings. And we identified over 150 line items that could be addressed in a project. Then we came back to the administration, kind of worked that, reviewed it, prioritized it, and it was a really good process there, and basically evaluated the energy conservation measures, the final ones, and came up with cost estimates for those and savings estimates, and then basically developed a list of what was recommended to pursue in this directed RFP process. Next slide. So the scope of work that we're looking at right now really centers on interior and exterior lighting upgrades. I mean, you guys still have older technology, fluorescents in a lot of the buildings, except for the two newer buildings, East Vincent, East Coventry. So basically, you'll see all of the other buildings we would recommend going to LED lighting, and you'll see a significant amount of the savings comes from that. There's also some, as far as lighting goes, some items that really may not provide a ton of energy savings, but really make it easier for your personnel, Aaron and Mike, to kind of control the stadium lights, for instance. They right now they can't control it themselves. You have to make a phone call and have basically the vendor do it for them. So it's really kind of improving the facility from a maintenance perspective. Along the same lines, HVAC recommissioning and temperature controls throughout the district. Basically recommissioning is, over the years after something's designed and it's operating in a building, operating parameters kind of start to stray a little bit from what they're originally intended to. So this is really going back in and making adjustments to the existing HVAC systems and making sure that they're operating as they're originally designed for. And then temperature controls. You guys may be aware that you have a lot of obsolete control systems in some of the buildings. So really going in and bringing, refreshing the controls makes it easier for your facilities group to, monitor temperatures, building schedules and set points for, it really improves comfort in addition to energy savings. Then there's a couple larger mechanical items, chiller replacements at 2 buildings, French Creek and North Coventry. Those are, past useful life, and basically going in, addressing those chillers, building it around redundancy, having a backup system and a solution for freeze protection is kind of what would be involved there. And then also replacing the auditorium rooftop units at the high school that are also, an issue and past their useful life. And then aside from that, we would really task the ESCOs while they're responding to the RFP to go in with kind of a different perspective and maybe come up with any other creative items that might be worth considering for the district. And then they would put that in their RFP response, and we would sit down and evaluate that alongside of your staff. Basically, the end result where we are right now, total project cost would be estimated at 4.4 million, with total savings of 7.7 million over 20 years. So very, very positive project, good investment. And obviously it's a combination of energy savings and then some of the operational savings. We'll go into that on the next slide with the sample cash flow. So this is kind of a cash flow of, year by year energy savings and O&M savings, which is operations and maintenance and rebates. But starting at the top, you can see, in bold, total cost 4.4 million, and then kind of working down into our cash flow, working left to right, you've got basically the utility costs as you have them right now. So you're about $1 million a year. If you really did nothing, you would just continue paying that with some energy escalation going forward. If you do the project, which is column B, you can drop that by about that $200,000 plus per year in savings, and generating in column C over 20 years just over $5 million in energy or utility savings. In addition to that, we talked about the operations and maintenance savings associated with things like the lighting material. There's also maintenance that goes into the failed equipment or older equipment that you have on the HVAC and mechanical side. So that would be reflected in the operations and maintenance savings, column D. And then there are utility rebates through Act 129 in column E, which is really just a one-time rebate. So you get a certain dollar per watt for lighting and dollar per fixture and sensor. So, that's all prescriptive rebates that you would also gain out of this project. So basically, if we go all the way to the right, we've modeled this at a 2.5%, district cost of money or financing rate. That's really up to the district at a later date. When all the proposals come in, we have a final recommended project. How you want to pay for it. That you might want to pay for some of it out of capital, and some of it might be financed. But we've modeled 2.5%, and at 2.5%, your break-even point is about 15 years. That's where you see on the right-hand side, it goes from 0 to start positive savings at year 15, with a net $2.3 million savings from your investment.
Hey, Tim and Jackie, if I could interrupt you for a second, just ask, have you done any kind of net present value on that? So I know the savings are spread over 20 years, but if I were looking at the economic value of putting out 4.4 million, what do those savings equate to in present dollar terms? Do you know?
Yeah, we haven't done a net present value, but it's a simple calculation that we could do if you wanted us to and follow up with that.
I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah. So when you're setting the loan payments identical to the total savings, what's the assumption here? Because I see loan payments, 304 savings, 304, what's the, I'm not.
Yeah. So when
the logic.
Yeah, when we model it, basically the way that the act works is, as a district, you need to make sure you can cover your loan payments with the savings. So we typically start with zeroing out basically modeling it out where your payments match the savings. Sometimes we have it where the payments slightly exceed the savings. So you're never going to fall short in your payment, for instance. And but this is just, again, a simplified model of matching the savings until you start exceeding the savings. And that's where you see it flip to positive at year 15.
And it's just a model, and however you want to pay for it is clearly up to the district.
But
Yeah.
you're taking $4.4 million in debt on a 15-year bond term at 2.5%. Is that what you're doing?
Yep. I mean, that's, again,
and just choosing how you're doing the payments. You're just changing them year to year. You're changing principal value there.
Yeah, essentially.
You're paying off interest and principal in line with the total savings every year. Yep.
And that's just how it gets modeled. You could model it any way that you wanted. You could borrow for 20 years and pay for it over 20 years. You could pay for it in all cash or however. Yeah.
So let me ask you, I mean, when you guys are doing, because 20-year, I'm not used to seeing something like this in a corporate environment as a, face of it as a positive project. This would be sort of it would be a tough sell, right? A 20-year payback on stuff that, what's the life? I guess, could you go back 2 slides to the savings slide where you identify where the 4.4 million is? Yeah, right here. So of these items here, stadium control, interior, exterior lighting upgrades, recommissioning HVAC, temp control, chiller replacement. Of these items, how many of these items are 20-year longevity items?
A majority of them.
So
like
the
control system, temperature control systems are going to be a 20-year item.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to maintain them, right? Just you have routine maintenance associated with this, this equipment. But I'll just point out a couple examples. So LED lighting typically has 100,000 hours of life. And for the amount that you would typically operate them, an LED light will last 25 plus years with the rated life of 100,000. The chiller, for instance, air-cooled chillers typically are 20 years. Water-cooled chillers are 25. Again, you're in that 20 plus year range. Larger rooftop units like the auditorium, 20-year item. So, and that's ASHRAE. It's American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning. They have kind of typical rated life for these types of systems.
So the other thing to think about is this is not just a project that you're doing just to generate energy savings. So there's a lot of need here that would be capital need otherwise. So for example, your chillers, they need to be replaced no matter. We're just saying design them in such a way to squeeze out all the energy savings that you can. Your lighting, you're still replacing your lighting on an annual basis, just replacing ballasts, etc. Temperature controls, there is a need to update obsolete controls already. So let's do it in a manner that generates as much savings as possible. So there's a financial component to this, but we've also, when we said we went through 150 line items, what we did is there's a ton of other things that would generate savings just for savings sake. But what we did is prioritize it down to what generates savings along with what is the district need infrastructure improvement wise. And that's how the project came together. And then the savings are really just trying to help offset the capital need that we've identified kind of in those ECMs that have both energy savings and capital need. So it's where it's a financial component, it's really kind of both is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so I had a quick question about the work that has to be done. That's included in your cost savings? I'm a little lost. So who does the work? Do we have to do the work? Do we hire vendors to come in and make the changes?
No,
are they included in these costs?
Yeah, that's a turnkey cost. So when we were talking about the energy service company, when we go out to RFP to get the contractor that's going to do that, that is for them to do turnkey all of this work. That's our estimate.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Right. So over 20 years, like the technology changes, right? So how do we know in 10 years if we're using the best technology to make things more efficient and better for our community when we signed this contract and it's over 20 years.
So the best way to think about that, I use lighting. Lighting's a great way. So let's say lighting, your baseline for lighting was $1 a square foot. Just use rough numbers. And we came in and put a technology in that can produce the same light for 50 cents per square foot. And that pays for the lighting moving forward forever long. Well, now if your next technology can come in and go from 50 cents a square foot down to 10, well, guess what? You've netted the 50. And if it made sense, you would also net the other 40. Now with LED, there's really not a lot left to save because you're already going from kind of a high efficiency to such a high efficiency on a per square foot basis that even if something cut that in half again, I just don't see it economically beneficial to do that again.
Yeah, so
maybe,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right, I see what you're saying. So 20 years ago, LED wasn't big, right?
Yeah.
With solar, batteries are really coming around and they're big. So they're becoming bigger. More efficient solar systems are coming around that last longer, to have less depreciation over the years. So do you guys come in at any point and reevaluate, or do you just come in every 20 years and realize that we're really behind in technology and want to replace everything all over again?
No, we do, like, not every 20 years. I mean, you come in, could be every 5 years, could be 10 years or so. And remember, so yeah, you've now lowered your whole baseline. So now you're using much less. So now the next technology has to be even greater. You got to cut that energy in half again to make it make sense to invest in infrastructure. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's if there's a leapfrog in technology, I like solar. You have a lot of solar in your building. Let's say they tomorrow build out solar panels that are 90% efficient. Well, we could always go back and look at that and say, okay, with where your baseline is today, does that technology make sense? Or does it still need another evolution before it makes sense?
Right.
And
Do
so
you guys,
we are always doing that. We are always.
Right. Okay. So my last question is, do you guys work with or look at grants that are offered to help us with our energy costs? Do you suggest grants to look at anything from EV vehicles that we may use around the campus to energy grants that are maybe in the future appear to help us? Do you guys do that type of work?
Yeah, we've done a lot of work in grants. When it comes to energy efficiency, a lot of the grants are now captured in kind of rebates. So the utility gives you a rebate for using a more efficient, and we captured a little bit of that money here. A lot of the grants for energy efficiency technology kind of went away. They used to have some grants for solar and wind and some other things. But like you said, since the technology is getting better, the need for grants, or at least the perceived need for grants, has been dwindling. So they're hoping to incentivize not so much with grant money as just the technology.
Yeah, but they always kind of come around every once in a while, right?
And
so
we're happy to look at that. There's a website that tracks all. It's called DSIRE, not desire, but it sounds like that. And what it does is every year it tells all the grants that are available in Pennsylvania, nationally, and everything else. And we're happy to go through that and just identify what grants could be potential here. And then what would happen is, as you select your ESCO, as they move forward with that agreement, we would write out the grants, or the ESCO would support writing out those grants, and just see what kind of money is available.
Right.
It never hurts. It never hurts.
Yeah, it never hurts, right? Because they roll around with different administrations, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my last question is, let's say if you want to be more green conscious, and maybe it's not, a great cost savings for us, but it is a social stand that we want to use more green energy. Like, for instance, I was using wind farms. That's the only energy that I would use for my house, even though it was more expensive, but I want to make a statement. Do you guys do that type of work, or do you guys suggest any green type of projects?
Yeah, and there's different reasons, like you said, for efficiency. We're working with some, like Lower Merion Township. They were very interested in carbon reduction. So we've done a lot in that space. And some of the things they did there, didn't have payback, but like you said, had social benefit to it. And I believe they actually buy green power as well. that is not as much my expertise, but Provident, who is the partner and works with you, certainly would have options for that if that's something the district would want to pursue. And they are more reasonable than they once were. So green power is it used to be significantly more than just grid power, but the delta is getting a little less because of the things that you said. Big PV fields that you'll see and wind farms that have been invested in and you can purchase back from. So that's something we can certainly investigate, no doubt.
And we have had some initial conversations with the administration around doing a further review of solar in some of the buildings. For instance, you guys have a large system at the high school, middle school. It would be worthwhile maybe evaluating some of the other roofs that are not, old and need to be replaced anytime soon. You usually would want to find a roof that has a 25-year life, because that's the life of a panel anyway, and maybe evaluate the economics there. If it works out, great. That can be part of the package. If not, you don't have to do that. But
can I ask you guys a question on the ROIs on each of the, either by line item or by, larger category here, because, it's all lump sum. It's kind of hard to understand. You got $4.5 million of costs, $7 million in savings, and it's over 20 years. There's a payback. Are there some of these projects, let's say the lighting going to LED, that have a higher ROI or a faster payback?
That's exactly what you're doing.
Lay that out. Could you lay that out for us and identify the where the highest ROI is? And then I'd like to separately then explore Cliff's point on some of the, like a solar project, or, as we're looking at, like these, glycanol systems that are more energy efficient if we're putting in for HVAC stuff. What do those projects look like? I mean, we have we're in a, not just on a roof, but we have land in our district, community solar projects where you have a piece of property that we could put solar panels on that are next to a school. So it doesn't necessarily have to be on a 25-year roof. There's other types of like energy projects like that we could look at independently to see if there's an ROI there. But specifically this stuff, I think you said the driver was a little bit, it needs to be done anyway, but I would like to see a more itemized ROI on it. And then secondly, are there other projects out there that maybe aren't need to have, but would have a high ROI for us to invest in?
Mr. Friel, I also wanted to call your attention to, there's a document called Energy Assessment Sheet. This might be the first step to what you're talking about. And Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, all of the line items have a dollar amount associated with them for the core energy project.
Yeah, and that's the 150 plus line items that it's a little hard to present in a public forum. But yeah, if that's in the board package or what have you, that probably has a little more of the detail you're looking at.
Yeah, and then there's other, beyond the core energy, which is what is being recommended, there's all of those other items and what those dollar values are worth. And that you can kind of see why we may not have included them in this initial core. So there's about three columns. But I think that's a good start to what you're asking for.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say that, if you went back to that list, the bulk of your savings, probably half your savings is going to come from the lighting, the interior and the exterior lighting. Of the other half, probably 80% of the other half is coming from controls, maybe 3/4 of it. The controls and operating set points and building schedules typically drives a good amount of savings as well. So those are your kind of, big, greatest bang for the buck. And then really, the other like part of the project is like Phil said, some of those more capital intensive type things that you need to do, which from a total cost perspective, you're at 4.4 million total. I mean, about half of that is the energy related stuff. And then the other half is stuff that's the, less energy savings, but more of a capital intensive type project.
And Tim,
Oh,
that was my
Yeah.
question too, and maybe more for Mike and Aaron, is that if we were looking at this just from and I know you just explained we're not looking at it just from an energy savings, but I'm always worried about what we missed, right? So we go out and finance 4.4 million, and then we find out we've got, these large systems in the next 5 years that need to be replaced anyway, even though they don't save us much. Or are you guys all in agreement that if we moved ahead with this priority list that you've suggested, that we've taken care of the majority of the capital expenditure cost that we might be facing, say, in the next 3 to 5 years?
This is Mike Shelgren here. When we started this process with ICS, we basically opened the books to them and showed them everything we have going on in all the buildings. We spent quite a bit of time with them going over all the systems. So I feel pretty confident we've captured everything we know about, put it that way.
Okay.
We know the age of our systems, and we know the systems that are giving us trouble, and the ones that are continually failing on us. The other part of this too is when the ESCOs come in and do their study, they might even capture something that ICS and ourselves may have missed as well. So I think between the ESCOs, ICS, and what we know, we've had a lot of eyes on this. And we also had a year or so ago, we had we had the feasibility study. So we had our engineer go through the systems, and we had all that information as well. So there's definitely been a lot of eyes on our systems.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
That answered my
Hey,
question.
Mike, I'm not sure if this question's for Mike or Tim, but we talk about systems. We have a lot of windows, right?
We do.
In our district. Are we good on Windows? Because I get those Windows people, they call me like every day when I replace all the windows in my house, and it says it's going to save me 40% or whatever. But we have mentioned one thing about Windows. Like, is that just a sales pitch that they're giving me, or is there real savings in?
If your windows are missing glass, then yes.
Right.
If they're not, then
never
no.
bought them.
Are they just empty panes? Then yeah, you're going to save 40%.
Yeah.
But otherwise,
I had one of those guys come out. They wanted like
highly-
$45,000 to replace all that. I'm like, there's no way I'm paying $45,000.
Well, it's an 80-year payback, Cliff.
Yeah.
Right. I'll be dead by the time I see a profit in that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just curious. Are we good on Windows? I mean, really, are we not? Is that not considered as?
Windows are one area where Windows are one area where I feel really good. I think we had great Windows. We actually had a window replacement project probably about 10 years ago or so. So between that and the new buildings that we built, I feel great about our windows. We have no problems at all. I'm sure we can check for leakage, but that wasn't even on the radar.
That's good. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, and usually when the infrastructure is good on the window, you can just replace the interior glass if you have an issue, just on a case by case basis. But wholesale going from double pane to triple pane, that is not going to save you money.
If you're looking for a good investment at your house, it's not the windows. For bang for the buck.
Yeah, go with spray foam if you're looking for a good investment for your house.
Yeah, closed cell spray foam.
I do have a specific question. The French Creek and the North Coventry chillers, what is their expected lifetime at this point? You said they need to be replaced. How soon do they need to be replaced? I'm not questioning them being in the project. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Each one of the chiller plants there, the equipment's right at that 20-year mark.
Okay.
So, could you maintain them and keep them running? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, one of the chiller plants is in worse condition than the other. Is that French Creek?
Yeah, French Creek is definitely the one that keeps me up at night. French Creek, unlike the other buildings, French Creek, we only have one chiller, so there's no redundancy built into that system. And that system is failing. We're hoping to get through another summer, but if we're worried that the compressor is going to fail and a chiller. At that point, we're going to be investing a lot of money to get that thing up and running again. So that one's definitely it's time for it to be replaced for sure.
Yeah,
It's always tricky when something is past its useful life. You know,
Yeah.
failure is inherently unpredictable. It doesn't tell you it's coming. So when these big machines fail, a lot of times they will fail in a very catastrophic way, and that puts you in a real tough spot. So you play a little bit of, you know, if you don't have to replace, or if you don't have money to replace it, maybe you try to make it live a little bit longer. But certain things, if they do fail, they can close school. So you definitely,
Mhm.
if you're living on borrowed time, it may be the best choice to replace it.
to give you an idea, there's another district that we're working with. They kind of ran a chiller to failure, more or less, and then they had to bring in a rental chiller before they came up with the plan to replace it. The rental chiller cost them about $12,000 a month. So
Upper Perkiomen.
you don't necessarily want to do that if you don't have to.
No, I was just curious
Yep.
on the length of expectancy that's left in those buildings. And
Yeah.
the one other question I would think, obviously with finance, is hopefully with rates as low as they are right now, we might be able to, if we move on this, might be able to get a rate lower than the 2.5%. That might change that evaluation in savings.
Yeah, that's possible, Melissa. And I think if we're ready to take the next step, then this is just an example of a model. We could really finance it any way that we want, as long as we're seeing that there are the net savings there. So we would bring in our financial advisors.
Hey, Jackie, have we done something like this before?
Yes,
Mhm.
we did it in 2011. We did it was a solar project, but it was also many other energy conservation measures wrapped up in there. We even took a look at the LED then, but it wasn't cost effective to do it then, which is, I'm not surprised that it's at the top of the list now, because we didn't take care of it then.
Right.
Yes, and so we have done this before.
So this is paid off for us, and that's why we're here today, right?
What
Okay.
makes the LED now cost effective? What's the underlying assumption in the cost savings?
Well, it's not so much an assumption as when, like in 2011, when we were looking at LED, was a relatively new technology, and it was much more costly on a per unit basis. So it cost probably twice what it does now. So you look at how the adoption of LED and the cost, and you'll see that the cost just went right off. I mean, when you look at LEDs at, you know, the store now, you know, $1 a bulb. It used to be like 10 plus, you know. So that was really the driver. The efficiency.
Well,
Sorry.
the lighting is friendlier as well. The appearance of the LED lighting is much nicer and interferes less with children who have some of the issues with LED and fluorescent lighting. It's much friendlier to those issues as well.
Yeah, that has come a long way, because first generation LEDs were very harsh, and they've really tuned them over the years to be much softer on the eyes. So yeah, it is much
You're
better.
breaking up occasionally.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's
I just want to go
for,
back to the underlying assumptions on the cost, just so I understand it. When you said you guys did it on a square foot basis versus other benchmark schools, are you looking at like just the kilowatt hours that were being driven by the number of lights, and then saying if we replace this many lights, we'd have this much kilowatt hour less? Like how's the math actually work to get to this saving? What's the underlying assumption? Like how deep?
So we broke up your usage into, you know, electric kilowatt hours per square foot per building, and then fossil fuels, it's basically BTUs per square foot, or 1,000 BTUs per square foot. And we compared those to other schools, again, in the area, and then looked at, you know, you have some more potential on the electric side, you know, less potential on the fossil fuel side, and basically use the data that we have to come up with the benchmark or target for where your district would be. So we didn't go through and do, you know, the count of every single light fixture that you have in the district at this point. That's for the next step. But what we did is we said, you know, here's where you are today. Here's where we believe this project could take you. And that gave you, it should give you a pretty good idea. I mean, Phil and I have been doing this for a long time. And we've, you know, got a lot of history here. But the next step is, you know, basically that ESCO company that gets selected or during this RFP goes through, and they're going to basically count every single light in every single room of your entire district. And then they're going to come up with a retrofit plan for each individual space, and quantify the savings on a per bulb basis, basically, or per fixture basis. So
then you'll have all that data after the next step, and it doesn't cost you anything to move to that next step. That's really the crux. And then they'll come out and they'll do a lot of engineering on their dime to make sure that they have the package that you want, and we'll help you evaluate that.
But this step is the scoping step, right? So we in the next step, we wouldn't be, to I think John's point of, are we capturing all the potential capital? Obviously, rates are favorable right now. Are there other projects that we should be looking at?
Well,
Are there things like, hey, we should be putting solar in because the capitals could drive a return? Is this the scoping part of this, or do we have another bite at the apple to look at scope?
You have another bite. So
Okay.
so what we've done, say at one of your neighbors, Upper Perk, is we had a base project, which was kind of what we're looking at here. But then we looked at all the other things and said, hey, look at these also and give us, long-term costs, paybacks, all these things on those. We may or may not do them as a district, right? But we want to know what it would take to do them all, even though we plan on only doing this core. So you could certainly do that. And that's the other thing the ESCO will do is if there's some creative things that we don't know about, look, we can't know everything, they'll bring them to the table and we'll evaluate them with you. And then you will choose the final project. This is not going out to bid the way that we're not designing everything to go out to bid the way that you do with traditional design, bid, build. These companies will come in and evaluate everything. You pick the company that you like the best. Then you pick out of what they did what the final project is. So you have total control of this.
Oh, so at the end we could say, hey, at this point we just want to do the lighting because that's the biggest ROI and limit it to that.
You could absolutely do that.
We're not saying it's guaranteed to be $4 million project.
No. Yep.
Okay.
And just to be clear, all the items that you had like 2 slides ago that are financed by the 4.4 million, or is that an exhaustive list that you had up there? So if we asked that, to Paul's earlier point, if we could see, Jackie, the IRRs or the net present values of the savings on each of the components, it would just help us understand where the biggest bang for the buck is and what the projects are that we just have to do because the systems are getting ready to fail regardless of what the internal rate of return is. Is that something we could together?
This is Mike. Jackie just texted me. She lost internet, so she's gonna jump back on.
I'm sorry, I'm back on now, guys.
I figured that was my big question for you, Jackie. I was just saying that's all right.
You can walk over to my house, Jackie. I'm here.
I might have to.
To Paul's point earlier, if we could just break down the internal rates of return and net present values on savings of the component parts of the 4.4 million, because we know that some are going to be real big savings and others are going to be systems that are going to fail if we don't replace them anyway. Yep. So it would just help us to understand, and I think the public to understand better.
Sure.
Yeah, no we can do that at a preliminary level, but I just so that, just to be totally clear, I mean, remember that this is really to say, hey, there's enough here for us to move to the next step, to release an RFP, and get these ESCOs to come out and give you all the detail that you need.
Yeah, and if we wait till then, that's fine with me too. I mean, I don't want to do a lot of work on something that's going to change on us.
Yeah, that's when we do that audit that you saw.
Okay.
If it looks, reasonable enough, the proposals that come back and they look good and they're evaluated by ICS, and then we really get down into the nuts and bolts.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jackie, I had a quick question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So are we trying to balance? I understand that maybe we want to break this up because 4.4 is a lot to swallow in today's time, right? But these are payments, and if it's a bond, if the rate is low now, should we take advantage of the low rate versus?
Oh yeah.
That's what we were. Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Instead of breaking it up. I mean, I understand what Paul and John, what you guys are saying. That do we have to do it all now, or can we break it up over the years? Because it's gonna seem like we're spending a lot of money up front in a time where the income to the district isn't as great because of COVID. right? But we also have to balance that versus what the rate we can get today because of COVID.
Right.
And
I
that's
think,
why the internal rate of return is important, right? Because if
Yeah.
it exceeds the cost of borrowing, we ought to finance everything.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
Okay.
why the example is the way that it is, just the example.
But
of
we
the
need to get to
funding,
the RFP.
because we already know that we can do improvements and not have net out of pocket and break even within, it looks like, in the 15th year, just
Right.
by financing. But if we look at the internal rates of return, I think that's a great idea. You'll really be able to see which ones are going to pay back.
Yeah, I just think we should do that. And honestly, we should probably, add to the scope too and look at those other solar projects and just kind of see what those look like. So we just understand them as we get into that RFP.
Right,
So-
because Phil, we're not committing until you evaluate,
No,
and then we
yeah.
put a contract based on what we actually choose to do, right?
Yeah, you don't
this is
commit for
key.
quite a ways from now. This is just,
Right.
hey, does it look good enough to go to the next step? And then we'll help you, get all of this data that we're talking about. It'll be so much more granular when you get the RFPs back on line by line basis, and we'll step all through that. Then you would go to a next step. And even then you're just committing to doing some engineering for the project. And then when that's all done, then it's the final commitment. Are you going to do 4 million or 2 million or 10 million or whatever makes sense for the district?
Yeah,
right.
I mean, from what I look at,
Okay.
it looks like you have enough here to move to an RFP. I would just ask Jackie if even
Yeah,
on
right, to go forward.
these numbers and IRR, net
yeah.
present value, just to
Sure.
get us in the ballpark.
Yeah, we can
Right.
do that.
Yep. Dr. John, do you have any questions? Haven't heard from you.
No, I'm trying to follow as best I can.
Okay. Just want to make sure everybody's have enough questions and they feel a comfort level so that we can, because we do need to take action tonight. As the Buildings and Grounds Committee, no finance comment on this, or we'll have too many people involved, it'll become a quorum. So if everybody is satisfied with the questions, I think there is one public member out there. Does that public member have any question or concerns? No one's raised their hand or sent a chat. Well, if everybody is satisfied with the information provided, are we ready to take action to go to the next step? Which of course we're not committing any finances to. It's just getting more information for us to evaluate and move forward.
Is this the board's
So-
decision? This is the board's decision, right?
Oh, yeah.
Deciding whether or not to bring it to the
It will-
board.
It will be. Right now, it's a
Yeah.
Buildings and Grounds decision to move it to the full board.
I
To
would
get the-
move that we move it to the full board for
Okay.
moving to the RFP stage.
And I
Okay,
would second that.
okay, great. Very good. Well, then we're on our way. And thank you to our presenters. I think you were very helpful. Obviously, very well versed in what you're talking about, but we also are fortunate to have Mike Shelgren and Aaron Rothrock with us because they're kind of leading that parade. So, okay, thank you. And those gentlemen, I guess, can go. Oh, you are home. Well, you can just relax.
I'm not,
I'm
but
gonna-
thank you so much.
You're not. You're
I'm
not.
in an
I'm gonna go
office.
say goodnight to my kids now. So thank you.
There you go.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks,
Great.
Tim.
Thank you.
Take
Thank you so
care.
much.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, all right. We are on to agenda item number 3, the district-wide service center. And as we all know, this is a culmination of projects, studies, and goals, which commenced with the opening of the new Coventry Elementary Center in October 2018. Other processes include the 2018-2019 feasibility study, excess and outmoded materials auctions, and most recently, the newly added district goals. This project comes has financially linked elements, sorry about that. Consideration of district-owned, consolidation of district-owned and leased properties. Termination of the warehouse lease expires August of 2020, and purposeful use of the former East Coventry Elementary Center. A determination was promised by the end of November 2020, and here we are. We will be retaining the existing library, maintain all existing play fields, granting access to community as well as district use, and retain some educational spaces. Again, B&G and Finance Committee, both please ask your questions. If the one public member is still on and they have a question, we certainly will have time for that. But now I will turn it over to Mrs. Crumrine and Mr. Shelgren. We have done a lot of work on this. and is progressing very nicely. So take it away, the two of you.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Booth. And
I
I'm
hope
going
your
to say
voices
right
are
now
better
that
than mine.
my internet connection is unstable tonight for some reason. I haven't had this happen yet. So if I drop off, Mike is perfectly capable of just stepping in and running with it. We have been, and we are making a recommendation tonight that we move forward with utilizing the former East Coventry Elementary School as our district-wide service center. We've also been working in conjunction with East Coventry Township because it does require a zoning amendment. Right now it's an educational services zoning, and we want to add storage with that. And they're very amenable. They spoke about this at their November 9th supervisors meeting. They're drafting up an amendment, and that language will be on the December 14th supervisors meeting. So I think that that's rolling right along. It takes a couple of months. It has to go through planning commission and everything. So as long as all of that is moving forward and continues to move forward, and I don't have any doubt that it won't, we think that this is a good move. I'm going to ask Mike Shelgren to go over the floor plan. Paul, if you wouldn't mind putting up the floor plan that we're looking at for the service center.
Okay. So the existing warehouse that we're in now, the old parking lot building, is about 28,000 square feet. So when we decided to take a look at turning, creating this district service center at the old East Coventry, we laid it out, and it actually, the way you see it now is it gives us about the exact same area as we have at the existing warehouse. The one nice thing about this building, and we did have the architect confirm, this building it's a steel bearing building. And what that means is the interior walls do not like hold up like roof trusses or anything. They're not load bearing walls. So like if you see the upper area, like area B storage, currently that's classrooms. So we can go through, all those classroom walls can come down, the corridor walls can come down and basically open it up to a huge space. And it will not affect the structure at all. So it actually works out really nice for storage. Then the other area A storage is obviously the existing gym, which like naturally is just set up nice for our high racking. There's very little have to be done to convert that to storage space. And then so between those two, that gives us equal storage of what we have now at the existing warehouse. In between the two, the area C, the trade shops, that would basically be like our carpenter shop, a plumber, our locksmith, electrician. Right now, they all have their own shop areas. So like, our carpenter has a wood shop back at our existing warehouse where, he'll build furniture, repair furniture, that kind of thing. Locksmith obviously, cuts keys, fixes door hardware, that kind of stuff. Plus we store like all of our supplies, like pipe, valves, fittings, breakers, you name it. That area kind of same thing. We can open up the walls there, kind of just open it up to like a shop area. Nothing fancy, just workbenches, storage for parts, pieces, that kind of thing. And then the last area is area D, the office. And what we want to do right now, currently my office, Aaron Rothrock's office, my secretary's office, we're at Warwick. So every morning, either Aaron or I go to the warehouse, we meet with the guys, get them tasked for the day, and then we go over to Warwick. So we're kind of separated from them. So there's a lot of traveling back and forth from where they're home base to where we are. So the beauty with this is we can move out of Warwick and move in with them and kind of centralize all that. So we're there with the maintenance crew, and we're kind of in a one team setup. And this also leaves open the remainder of the building for any kind of future use, like the educational users. We're not touching. There's two wings there of classrooms that we're not touching. The library area remains untouched. So if that wants, if it want to be turned into like a training center or a library or just a public meeting space, LGI type of thing, that's wouldn't take a lot of work because it's basically what it is now. Just removing some of the book stacks, and there you have it. So that's the basic concept of it. This is still, this is very early. we walked the architect through a few times, the engineer, mechanical engineer through a few times, just to confirm that this is something that would seems like a good idea that would work, but we really haven't worked out the details of it yet. So that would, I guess that would be the next step if we decide to go forward. We really, really dig into this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and sorry, I did forget to mention that one of the beauties of it would be that you and Aaron will be with your group on a daily basis.
Yes. Yes.
I did forget to mention that. That's very important, actually. That was one of the reasons we kind of came up with the idea of consolidating all of you in that location. And maybe, as we were just talking about with the energy people, there might be a place on that roof that might be a good place to put some solar in. That just, maybe not, but it just, popped in my head.
Mhm.
That maybe that should be looked at when we do the other RFP. Anyway, who has any other questions? We've kind of bantered this around before. East Coventry Township officials were very helpful. They worked with us and are very anxious for this to go through. They would prefer that the building is left and the fields and the playground are there for community use as well. So at this point, who has any other questions? I'm sure there are questions.
Melissa, where do we stand on the sewage issue? I was seeing all those classrooms in there and public space and all that. Is that included in any kind of preliminary proposal you're looking at?
It is.
That would be, yeah, Jackie. Yeah, you go ahead.
Sure.
You there, Jackie?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Yes, in the preliminary cost estimate that we had Marana Main do, which is very preliminary, it includes sewer. So we have the sewer line, the new sewer line that is run from the new East Coventry Elementary School. We did have that run over to the old school. We also have internet capacity that was run over. The only line we really have to, that will involve some cost, is the water, because the water is out there on Saratoga Road and it's not a huge cost, but we have to trench from the building out to the water line. That is one of the requirements of the township. And that is in the preliminary cost estimate.
Okay. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. One of the other beauties is we don't have to, oh my goodness, it just left my brain. We don't have to go through the planning commission because we aren't really doing anything to the footprint of the building or the macadam or any of those issues as well. Correct, Jackie?
Right, the land development piece.
Land development. I could not think of land development, which is,
that's a long process with the
that's
town.
a very long and expensive process. So that's very fortunate as well.
Right. What about the movement of the things that we're storing itself? That's
We'll
is
do
that
that.
yeah, we'll do that. But is there a cost associated with that, or do we need rentals to move things, or are we moving things using our current vehicles, or?
The way we've typically done moves, like say when we moved from the old EC to the new EC or the old EV to the new EV, is we would rent tractor trailers. Basically, they would drop trailers off for us. We would load the trailers. We would tell them, hey, come pick them up. They're loaded. They would move them to the other spot. Then we would unload again. So we use all of our labor. So our rental cost was, I think we rented a couple forklifts, and then it just was the trailer rental and the truck moving them around as needed.
Yeah, that's not a lot. Right.
No, it wasn't bad.
All right. Okay.
Jackie,
What's
for
the time
comparison. Oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
Yeah, what's the time frame of completion if we go forward with this thing? How soon can we get it up and?
Well, the lease that for the building that we're currently in, that lease expires in August of 2022. So
Okay.
we need to be out.
Yeah.
by then. And we really wouldn't want to go out to bid for this project until we knew that the township supervisors approved the zoning ordinance change. So that's probably going to be around March. So we would want to move forward with some preliminary work on that, look at financing, that type of thing. But we wouldn't want to go out to bid until then. And so then, Mike, how long do you think that would take then if we went out to bid, maybe April or May?
Yeah, I mean, the design part of it would be fairly short. I think this, from giving an architect a go to ready to bid, probably in a few months, I would think. And then, the bidding process will probably take another month
That's another month.
before, advertise, give them time to, put the bids together. And then we actually have a bid opening, probably about a month for that bid process.
In 21, I mean, I think we would be, Mike, don't you think we would be in construction?
Oh, yeah. I think,
Late.
yeah, if everything goes, if we don't run into any stumbling blocks, we could certainly be in the construction, probably, fall 2021.
Right, we're not really working around children, so we really could be doing that at any time of the year, which is good for bid pricing because schools are always trying to get that done in the summer, so.
Yeah, how's that zoning like between this? You said we're going to change the zoning, but you can still use it as a facility where we may teach kids. Is
Right.
that a problem or?
Well, right now, the way that the language says it's an educational use. So
It can be
they're
both, dual purpose.
modifying it for educational and storage. So that
Okay.
we could be flexible there.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
you're right, Cliff, there is a portion of the building that we're not using. We are using it right now because we have, we've spaced everything out for COVID. So we have a lot of extra furniture that we really are storing at the former East Coventry building and the different classrooms.
Jackie, can I just ask on
Sure.
it's kind of a small project. Have we ever done something like this with design build, with bringing GCs in here versus doing, like full architecturals for?
You know what? We haven't, but it doesn't mean we couldn't. And we have to still do it through
Yeah.
protected procurement.
Right.
So we have done a roof like that before, so when we
Yeah.
put the French Creek Elementary School roof on, we did it design build through, we have to use the vendors that are approved on those.
Yeah, just a thought, because it's
Yeah.
not a huge project and its scope's pretty tight,
Right. And we're doing a lot of it ourselves. So we're trying to
Yeah.
minimize
All right.
the actual.
Jackie, isn't that how we did the new North Coventry roof as well?
Mike?
That one was actually bid. That one did go out to bid. But the French Creek roof, we did that way. We did it through a purchasing consortium, through an approved vendor.
Yep.
Jackie, if I ask a question that's more executive, just let me know, but
Uh-oh.
have we had any conversation with the existing landlord of the existing service center with any indication of where they're at pricing wise, just for comparison? Did I freeze up?
No, you're good.
Maybe
You're
Jackie
good. I don't know where
Jackie might have.
can go knock on her door and let you know.
That might have been my answer. No, I just
Let me
think,
ask a question.
for baselining, I always just like to have the alternative paths so that.
So,
we're-
hey, I can actually answer this since Jackie's
Okay.
not on, and I asked her this same question the other day is, no, she's not had a response back from them.
Okay,
The multiplier used in there was 2 looks that we did on the valuation of that Parmalat building for comps. One was a comp and one was a 10x multiplier on rent, which is kind of a standard to get like a $2.1 million valuation. Plus then there's a demo, and if the use of that Parmalat building, there would be capital on top of that. So it's just a square
Right.
footage.
that's if you're gonna buy it, but lease wise would be the other question.
So,
Just
yeah, there's no
extend.
response from them at
Okay.
all. So the lease is just a standard CPI X escalator as
Okay,
just kind of taking it out, but
Sorry about
they've had
that,
no
John.
response.
that's okay. Paul handled it.
Okay, good. I
Yeah.
don't know. Every time you ask me a question, I get kicked off.
I know, you just don't want to answer anything tonight.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions before we consider the recommendation to move forward? Any other questions?
What does the move forward mean? What do we do next?
Again, it's recommendation to the board of the school directors for the approval to proceed with the
Really the-
district-wide service center project.
Is that proceed to go to an RFP or design? What's the next step? Is the design like finalizing all the scope?
Right, the next, if you don't mind me
Next step.
jumping in, the next step, with the
Yeah.
board's approval, we would then continue down the road.
Yes, but we need full board approval before we go to the next step.
But this isn't the final pull the trigger board approval. It's just to move to the next evaluation step, right?
Well, it's to go forward
To the
with
board. Right?
project design. Yeah, this is to go forward to the full board, but from the B&G committee. This would be to go to the full board approval to invest in the, and Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is for the approval to proceed with the district-wide service center project. And proceeding would then mean going to design, et cetera.
So we got to make a decision on the 2 whatever million dollars it is. Does that include how we're going to finance it?
No, it does not include how we're going to finance it. Jackie?
No, I did just jump back on. I'm so sorry about this. So when I lost connectivity, I was starting to talk about what our next steps are.
Okay,
And
you go ahead.
It's really approval to move forward to the next step. If you're comfortable with moving to the next step with this project, we would then look at consultants. You know, we would need an architect, and we would continue down the road with East Coventry Township, the board, and working on bid specifications or design build. The board would not be committed until we actually awarded contracts again. So it's really to move to the next step in the process. We just want to make sure that the board is comfortable with us moving to that next step.
But where's the money coming from again?
We would either be looking at borrowing money, and when we originally talked about this at our planning meeting, it makes sense to combine these two projects together from a finance perspective. If the rates are that low, it really makes sense to do that, because our capital reserve fund right now is about $5.2 million, and I'm not comfortable dipping into that at all, because we use that to fund ongoing regular maintenance, technology, infrastructure. So we would be recommending that we would be looking, our next step would be also to look at the financing.
Okay, well, that fund is our rainy day fund, right?
Absolutely, and
Yeah, so-
ongoing.
That's for all the projects that we missed in the energy project.
Exactly. Plus technology. I mean, it's technology.
Yes. Jackie, does the timetable line up for the two projects in terms of, approvals and RFPs and all that kind of stuff? Or do we just go out and borrow the money in advance?
We could borrow the money in advance, but I wouldn't want it to be too much in advance. You know, we would want to try to structure that properly. So as long as
Yeah,
we're in
so
advance, yeah.
So what if we didn't do it? What happens if we didn't do it?
Well, we have to find somewhere to go. And if you look at the financial analysis, we're spending over $200,000 a year right now for a building, to lease a building that we don't own. So we're looking.
Right. So we have to move out of that building anyway.
Right now, we would, because we have been in contact, or tried to be in contact with the landlord. You know, that lease expires in 2022. I think we could find, to reuse our own building is the most cost effective. If you look at the cash flows for that, it's in the.
No, I understand. My concern is having such a large expense in a down income period. You know what I mean? I just want to know, like, if we didn't do it, it's business as usual, and it's a cost that we would incur anyway. But if we do this project, then it looks like we're spending money where we may not have to necessarily spend money.
Well,
even though it's better for the district, I agree, it's better for the district in the long run, right? But in the short run, because we're in a down income period, should we go out and just keep borrowing money? I know it builds us up for the future, or it could be that we look at it as this is for future investment. It's going to save us money in the long run. It's just hard borrowing money.
But
at
you're
this
trading
point.
off, Cliff, just so that you're looking at the apples to apples comparison. Right now, we have a maintenance on that East Coventry buildings,
Right.
$50,000-$60,000 a year that we're in that building investing, plus our $200,000 a year lease at Parmalat, plus those escalators. So you're looking at a sunk, what we're committed to paying is like $260,000 a year. So the
Almost 3.
is it almost 3? I don't know what the number. So call it north of 260 that
Right.
we're committing, that we're right now paying. The question is, your options are: do you go out and lease another building, right, for the same? You still have the expense of the East Coventry building. So you'd probably be still in that $300,000 a year total expense versus converting the asset that we have. And if we borrow that money, is that less than that 250, or is it equal to or less than that $250,000 to $300,000 expense that we're
Well, yeah, that's what I want to know. So what would the payment look like if you borrowed the money?
So I think Jackie has a cash flow on this.
Sorry,
she
I'm
does.
connecting from my phone. Yes, there's a cash flow attached. Let me just open that up.
Yeah,
It's in
that's
board
not-
docs.
Yeah, it's in, is it in board docs? I keep.
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
Looking for it.
It's there.
Executive
Mhm.
content.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yep.
oh, oh,
Yeah, and executive content. The other
Okay.
issue is, if we do nothing with that building, we would probably have to raise it. And that's another $500,000 at least of money just to tear the building down.
Yeah, the estimate's 700,000 to demolish the former East Coventry plus the treatment plant.
well, no, not to demolish it, but not do it this year. So the current lease that we have, could we extend the lease for a year? And then I'm just throwing it out there to make sure we're looking at all angles, right? I mean, it sounds like a plan that sounds very logical. I'm concerned about the timing, that's all.
Mm.
Right,
Well, the lease, if we were going to do the project, we were tasked with coming forward with a recommendation that combines utilization of the old East Coventry and finding a warehouse location, because we knew that that warehouse lease expires in August of 2022. I don't know what the landlord's planned use for that warehouse is, and we would likely have to find another location. So we would be looking for another location. And if that's the direction that the board wants us to go in, we would need to know that now. We would either be looking for another warehouse location, or we would move forward with really utilizing the old East Coventry.
yeah, so we have until 2022, right?
Well,
But not
we have-
really.
That's what,
we have until then to make that happen. We have
we have to make it
have
happen
to
by
do that now.
2022.
Right.
we
Yeah.
don't have it until the last minute.
And it's,
Yeah.
and the, to convert this building is gonna take, what, a year and a half? Well, we
Oh,
can convert it
no.
before that lease is up.
We would convert it before the lease is up.
Lease is up.
It's a
right?
$2 million project. It's not like a $25 million project. It's not going to take
Sure.
the length of time that does to renovate or to build a new building.
Okay. All right.
And Jackie,
so-
the annual maintenance costs, are they built into your cash flow savings in terms of,
Um,
so we're paying 50 grand a year now just to keep the empty shell of a building up?
We are. No, I don't even think I have that in there actually, because I
I'd
have
make
no
sure
internet
to
right
count
now,
that
so I
in,
can't
because I
connect.
remember thinking to myself, we're paying
Yeah.
50 grand a year for a building that we'd have to demolish for 700. So
Right.
we're just wasting $50,000 a year unless we make a decision.
Correct.
Yeah, we really are. And
Yeah.
we did say that, within 4 years or so, we needed to make a decision on what we're going to do with this building, or we need to demolish it.
Right.
We really tried to engage other, the Chester County IU and plenty of other places.
No, I want to lease it, right?
No, we're the northern tip of the county. And we certainly don't want, I will say this publicly, we certainly don't want a charter school to come in. Like,
Right.
I hesitate to put it up for sale. I'd rather just have it be land
Yes.
if we're not going to use that building.
So the
Yeah,
net is
there-
about the delta is about a $1.3 million difference between conversion and demolition here. So you're looking at an incremental, the evaluation is really $1.3 million
Right.
versus a
Mhm.
$250,000
Okay.
a year cost.
All right. No, this
Yeah.
is good discussion, because we're gonna have to sell this, right, to the public, to say that, this is the reason why we're doing this now versus waiting until our income levels out, right?
Right. And that's why we were combining it with the energy efficiency as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I 100% agree with it. I just want to make sure that this project is at the right time.
At the right time.
That's all.
Well, is everybody satisfied to move it to the full board? B and G?
Yes.
Yeah, I like the idea.
Okay, very good. I'll take
And
that.
Cliff, I would add one more thing, which would be another point in favor of going for full financing. is that you ease the immediate financial burden on the district, right? Because you're going to spread that cost out over a
You spread it
on
out, yeah.
financing.
Right.
And the rates
We're
are
gonna have
low.
operational
So,
savings for sure.
yeah, like I
these
said, I
payments.
just wanted to be fully
Oh, yeah.
transparent with the public.
That's why I
right?
asked if we even heard from them. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate, Cliff, I would say if you look at it at executive summary, the cash flow, the cash impact to the school district, to taxpayers, it's beneficial to go forward in converting this building if these costs remain where they are at. So we'd be actually saving cash if we
Right.
took the debt on of $2 million to
Right, so our communication to the public should be as such, right? So it doesn't look like we're just spending money just to spend money, and when we have a negative cash flow.
Right.
Yeah, this would actually be positive cash flow to the
Right. This will save,
Okay.
this will save dollars.
Yeah,
Okay.
and actually, that's a discussion I did have with some of the East Coventry Township officials, was that it was a benefit to the district financially, and we are in a financial deficit situation, which we normally are never in. So that was, the community was very welcoming to that. The township was very welcoming to that theory. So you're right, Cliff, it's a very good talking point. It's financially beneficial and it's community beneficial.
So Jackie, if the board agrees to move forward with this project, what's the next step for East Coventry? What are we waiting for them to do? And how long do we expect that will happen?
Okay, so the next step, and we can make this motion contingent upon the approvals there as well. So the next step is at December 14th Supervisors meeting, and they have their solicitors drafting a motion. And it also provides, the supervisors will provide approval to provide a public notice and hearing. Because when you're changing a zoning, you have to have a public hearing. So then the supervisors will likely approve that on December 14th. It will go to a public hearing. I think it's tentatively scheduled for February 8th of 2021. And it will also go before the Planning Commission on January 21st. Because the supervisors have to take input from all of their different, committees and boards. So that's why we think it'll probably be the end of February or March before it circles back around again to the supervisors.
Which is why it's important, if we're going to do this, we do this now.
Right.
Right. That's
Yeah.
why the meeting was on the 18th, so that we can vote on it on the December meeting.
Okay.
Right, the December business meeting. And that really
Right.
gives us then the authority or the approval to move forward with next steps, just in getting things lined up in order to say, oh, here's the project. Do you want to go out to bid? Or
Okay.
And they're we're fairly confident on the 14th, they're going to say yay, right?
At this point, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Don't you feel that way, Jackie?
I do. And we can always make any of this contingent upon, the zoning change. We can't do anything without that.
Sure.
Really.
I agree with
Yeah.
that. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Even if you don't make it contingent, it doesn't matter if they don't approve it.
Right.
That's true.
Yep. That's true. Yeah.
All
We
right.
just wouldn't go forward.
Well, I wonder, we've had a first and a second, so we will move it to the full board. And thank you, committee. I appreciate it. And all the questions were really good from B&G and from finance, but thank you. So, Mr. Paul, you are now up. And
Oh, I gotta log off, guys.
Yeah,
Is this finance?
this is where we always lose attendance.
I know.
It's
Right.
typical.
I'm breaking up. I'm breaking up.
I tried that already.
Wow.
oh,
All right, thanks, guys. I
Yeah.
gotta go.
Paul,
Yeah.
I keep telling you, somehow I thought finance was going to go first.
I know. Melissa arranged it to do that. Do it that way.
well, yeah, we
I
can work
give
it
Melissa a lot of credit because she actually pushed this project and took a hard look at it. So, Melissa, this is
yeah, I
definitely,
did.
thanks to your hard work that we got this as a real option now for this. All right. So moving on to finance. Well, this will be a pretty quick, finance meeting as I go back through board docs here and try to get back to the agenda.
Famous last words, Paul.
Yeah.
Well, I
I'm
hope.
doing it without board docs. So that'll be
I mean,
fun.
there's two big. I mean, one thing on this is just the consolidation of all the CARES Act. If you see that in your your notes there is, I know that's been a public comment or, question each time each time we've had money or grants given to us under for COVID cost and
Oh,
we've had people come and ask, and Jackie has put a consolidation of where the money came from and how it was spent. So it's just an easy thing that we've already, gone through in the 9 finance meetings we had previous to this one this year. But this
even
is,
though we hide everything.
yeah, this is just a concise
Mhm.
cheat sheet to put it all together that can be public, and that way there's a good, so if anybody has any questions on it, feel free to ask Jackie about it. But this is stuff that's, a lot of this kind of already has come up before.
Right,
Mhm.
and we've talked about it. There's
Yes.
and just to summarize, there's about $1.1 million of grant funding that we've received, and it is all detailed on that. And it's also out on the website. It has been it's under the finance department, and it's been there for several months now. So we'll keep that updated every time we receive new funds. And then we have spent, I don't want everybody to think that the grant money is covering everything. I think it's important for everyone to know that although we're receiving $1.1 million of grant funding, which is amazing and wonderful, and that's flowing from the federal government through the state and then also the CCIU to us, we've spent approximately $1.6 million on COVID-related spending that is really above and beyond our budget. So that's a net excess spending of about $511,000. And on all the types of things that you see being charged out to the grants.
Okay. When something else is posted on the website, is it asterisk that it's a new grant, or, I mean,
Well,
maybe do that if something new comes in?
we can do that. Right now, we just added to the bottom of the list, but and then change the total. But I can certainly do that. So the County of Chester, that was the last grant we added.
Yeah.
The money that flowed through.
Single that out, or whatever else new that might come in, single it out so that shows it's something new.
Sure.
Yeah. And then
Jackie, do you
problem.
know of anything else, or are you guys as an admin aware of any other money in the pipeline, or you think we're pretty much at the end of our rope with COVID funding?
Dr. Lloyd, are you aware of anything else? I'm not at this point. Not really sure.
She might have stepped away.
Yeah, she might have. Yeah, I'm not aware of anything else at this point. We're always looking. And Brandon has done a really good job too. Of
Dr.
making sure
Lloyd's
he
back.
keeps us-
Did you hear that question, Susan?
I did. No, we're not aware of any other funds
Okay.
that are out there. The county, the last funding we got was from the county.
Okay. Thanks.
I don't expect much to come from the state. They're already about $4.5 billion in arrears.
Right. I don't either.
yeah, anything comes is going to be a federal stuff
Mhm.
tied into new money.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Yeah.
Jackie, included in those grants, remember when we closed in the spring and we got the information that we had to keep paying everybody and do all that stuff, and we were going to be reimbursed? Is all that promised money in that grant stuff, or is that come separately as reimbursement?
We are not being paid. We had to keep paying people, and it was the law. And we're still paying for, FFCRA and other things like that are not budgeted. But there's no money that is coming for that. What they did say was that, you would get a percentage of your transportation reimbursement if you
That was
paid
it.
for transportation under Act 13.
I thought they said when we had to keep paying everybody, teachers, staff, as though they were employed, that they had made some kind of gesture to us like they were reimbursing us. That was all
No.
smoke and mirrors.
Absolutely no reimbursement.
Awesome.
reimbursement.
Great. I'm glad they
Yeah.
demanded that we do that then, which
Yeah.
I guess is why we're in the hole.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Let's not do that again.
Yeah.
So if we have a choice.
And I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Government mandates, gotta love them.
I will, before, I know there's the next agenda items, the fiscal year update with Jackie, but I just, because it was a hot topic on the grant update, I'll just ask the public if there's any public question. You can go ahead and then put it to us on that grant stuff if there's a question out there. If not, I will say, Jackie, take it away for the fiscal year update.
Okay, this is just a brief update to let everybody know where we are in relation to our budget and what I see our watch areas as being. We took a look at our real estate tax collections up through the end of October, and that accounts for really 68-70% of our total revenue in the district. Through October 31st, we've collected 94.7% of our tax revenue for 2020. And when you compare it to last year, we were at 95.2. So we're about 0.5% lower in our collections up through October. November and December, we really need to collect about $4 million in order to make our budget number. And that we're in the penalty phase there. And then in January, we turn everything over to tax claim. And I'm anticipating we probably won't hit that 4 million and that some will be turned over to tax claim, and that our delinquent tax collections might be a little higher than they were last year. So that's where I think we are with tax collection. EIT is our next largest revenue source. And surprisingly, it's been about year to date, it's about 200,000 to the good. I don't want you to think that we're well ahead of the game, because when individuals file their 1231 income tax returns, then we'll see in the next quarter, and then after April, that's really where we see, are we making the budget number or not? I think that we proactively lowered our expectations there, so hopefully we'll hit that target. That's a little bit more of an unknown. And then if you look at the other two areas of revenue, and I'm talking about local revenue, we don't receive much federal funding, and state dollars they come to us, sometimes slow, sometimes not, but they come to us. Transfer tax and interim tax. So transfer taxes are a little bit up, and I'm not surprised by that. People are getting good dollars everybody's moving out of the city, one example. So transfer taxes are up a little bit. Interim taxes are down, so they're kind of washing each other out at this point. We'll just keep an eye on that. Where I'm seeing the bigger impact is in our expenditure area. So we already talked about COVID spending, so we know we're about maybe $500,000 above budget net of our grant money than we have budgeted for COVID spending in general. The other areas that we have that we know we're going to exceed the expenditure budget is charter school tuition. And I know we talked about this in finance, but just so that everyone else is aware, we're projecting about $1.5 million over budget in our expenditures. That means that those are families who have left our system and went to charter schools. We're hoping it's temporary during COVID. And we did anticipate that would happen. And in our June 30th year end and on our audited financial statements, we appropriated and assigned some fund balance to cover that for the next fiscal year. And then, of course, we have leave of absences and substitute costs. We're running high. We're probably about, maybe if you project it out to the end of the year, maybe about $300,000 over budget there, because things came along after we approved the budget, right? We had FFCRA, and there were just things that came along that we were mandated to do that when we approved the budget, we didn't know that they existed. So we're just monitoring those items. If you recall, when we proposed the 2021 budget, we did have a shortfall in the budget itself. So that shortfall was about 2.4 million. That was our projected deficit for 2021. And we do have that appropriated and assigned for in fund balance as well. So that's why we're just keeping a really close tab on where we are. And I can give you updates, as often as you want. And you do receive the monthly financials. But I just wanted to kind of let you know where we are and what our watch areas are for our current fiscal year.
If you take that fund balance, Jackie, and you add everything you just set up, the exceedance on COVID over what we had anticipated, what do you see like aggregate total dollars fund balance?
So right now we appropriated, let's just say about $4 million in fund balance for the shortfall in the budget that we projected, and for the charter school stuff that came about after the fact, right? So when I'm looking at that, then I'm saying, okay, that's covered. The items that may not be covered, if you're looking at this, would be maybe the leaves of absence or the FFCRA. And what was the other item? Oh, the COVID expenditures of $500,000. So we're probably about 800,000 there. So I would say right now we have about 800,000 that are not covered, but hopefully we'll have savings in other areas, or maybe we do a little better in some of the revenue than we projected. Like that's what we're watching.
So it might be an offset, but right now, 800,000, if all things being equal,
Right.
more than what we thought was going to be the
Correct.
spend and the cumulative fund balance transfer.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, above that, if that makes sense. So that's, I just wanted to let everybody know where we were.
That's good update.
Jackie, when for the 2021 school year, when are all the revenues in the door?
Well, all of the local revenues, nothing is really all in the door until June. But
okay.
The bulk of our tax revenue, the tax levy for the 2021 school year, whatever we don't collect by January 15th, we have to turn it over to the county for collection. And that's the bulk of our revenue, right? So if we can hit our 98% mark that we usually have, we're turning 2% over, I'll feel fine and our collections will be normal. So we have to get through November and December.
And then we may have some other stuff dribbling in from the feds or whoever that comes in at a later date, right?
Right. The state revenue always comes in, it just comes in, every so often throughout the year. The federal dollars flow in, all throughout the year. EIT, earned income, flows in all throughout the year. Transfer tax all throughout the year.
Okay.
So,
all right. Thank you. Yep.
You're welcome.
And just for everybody's benefit, Jackie, the estimated Act 1 index that has the escalators in it for O&J, what's the estimate for the 21-22? What's the
21-22 Act 1 index, which is your tax cap, is 3%. That's the cap for 21-22, the next budget year. We're currently in a 2.6.
Right. I just wanted to for everybody's benefit, I just wanted to plant that's what is and that's based on those calculations of what they expect our expenses to be plus.
Right. They look at that statewide. Most schools will be at 3%. They're looking at educator salary indexes. They're looking at spending, statewide weekly wage. It's a bunch of different factors that go into that. And then we know what it is the September. So we knew that at the end of September for the next budget year. So that's, and the only schools that are higher than that would maybe be schools that are more economically disadvantaged, really, really low income schools. They might have a higher threshold.
Right. And then our approach to this, as we said, is what we're doing is going net neutral, meaning we're just going to say, what's the deficit if we just do just look at the contract escalators.
Correct. Like that. Right. What we do behind the scenes, we're going to do in public. So when we start our presentations in January, really for, probably be the first meeting in January, the committee of the whole, we'll kind of do a quick snapshot and say, if we roll our contracts over and if we do a 0% tax increase, what's the difference between revenue and expense? And then how
underwater we are.
Right. And then how do we want to fill that gap?
Yep. Good. Anybody have any questions from the committee?
Nope.
Nope.
All right. Any public questions before we close out for tonight? Exciting stuff, this finance committee, I tell you.
Yeah, well, we didn't get any public questions for the buildings and grounds either. So.
No hands up, Mr. Friel.
All right. So thanks everybody for tonight. Great job on that. And Melissa, again, thank you for all that work on pushing that building through. So appreciate that.
You're welcome. I'm glad to see that go through. Tidying up loose ends is what I like to think of it as.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Time to go home, Dr. Lloyd.
Yep.
Time to go home.
Right. Thanks.
All
everyone.
right. Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Night.
Good night.